Chairman, General Jacoby, General Kelly, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your decades of service to our nation and your vigilant defense at a time when the threats to America and the threats across the world seem to be growing. I have a series of questions. I want to start, General Jacoby, with a question that you and I had an opportunity to visit about yesterday in my office, and I appreciated your coming by to visit, which is, as you know, I have a long-standing concern about the threat of an EMP attack on the United States. And as we see nuclear proliferation, we see nations like Iran that seem hell-bent on acquiring nuclear weapons capacity. The question I wanted to ask you is what is your assessment of the impact an EMP attack could have on the United States, and how prepared are we to deal with that?
Senator, electromagnetic pulse is a real concern with the detonation of any weapon of mass destruction like a nuclear warhead. And so I think that it is a known fact that it can have a large impact and a wide impact on electronic devices of all types. Probably the most worrisome would be communications, energy infrastructure, control mechanisms. And so for a long time we've understood that threat, but we don't have good hard science yet or modeling on what might be the large-scale effects of that. And I've worked with the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, and we're going to try to bore into that question so that we have more hard evidence of that. There really aren't good ways to model that or to see the effects of it, but we know that it exists. And of course, an air device would be more devastating to us than a ground-based device. What we have to do now is make sure that the infrastructure upon which we rely the most for our defense infrastructure is EMP hardened, and we've known that for a while. It's extraordinarily expensive to do that. My command center in Cheyenne Mountain remains a viable and important part of our national command and control system simply because, if for no other reason, because it's completely EMP hardened. So these are important questions to think about across all of our critical infrastructure. We've come up with a project, really a science and technology demonstration called SPIDERS, which tries to describe how, with our critical infrastructure, we can create microgrids and self-healing energy systems. A lot more work has to be done on that, and it has to be partnered with private industry as well.
Would you agree that right now the risk is unacceptably high in terms of the impact of an EMP attack? If a nuclear weapon were detonated in the atmosphere above the eastern seaboard, the capacity, setting aside the impact on our military assets, the capacity simply on the civilian side, if it took down the electrical grid, could impose catastrophic economic harm and potentially the loss of unspeakable numbers of civilian lives if the electrical grid went down for a long period of time and food delivery was significantly impaired. Would you agree that that risk is highly worrisome?
Senator, I think it's worth us worrying about, and I don't think we know enough to describe the correct degree of risk, but it is sufficient risk that we should be considering it. And I would say that the most important thing we do is make sure that we're continuing to collect the intelligence that would warn us of EMP risk, and if an EMP risk was to increase. And frankly, we need to do better modeling so that we can exercise against a denied environment because of the effects that we know EMP can create.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess another potential area to deal with that threat is to improve our capacity with regard to missile defense. And I'm sure you saw the recent news out of Israel just yesterday. 40 rockets were fired from Gaza into southern Israel. In the National Defense Authorization Act for the last year, the Senate Armed Services Committee required the Department of Defense to study missile defense threats from the south, such as from the Gulf of Mexico. Can you discuss this threat and what Northcom has or needs in order to deal with this potential threat?
Senator, thanks. We've worked on that, and we have a test that we are conducting right now called J-Diamonds, where what we're doing is we're discovering how to integrate current systems such as Aegis, Patriot, F-15s, F-16s, CF-18s, to quickly bring together packages within the United States and to be able to engage across a spectrum of cruise missiles or short-range ballistic missiles. And the last test we ran last year, we focused on the Gulf of Mexico. And so I can give you more details because some of that is classified how we ran that test. But I can tell you that we have found that we have both some significant challenges in doing that, but we also have some opportunities to use existing systems more effectively to do that. In particular, though, I think that the cruise missile threat we are working on, the cruise missile threat portion of that we're working on very hard.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to those continued conversations. Let me shift to the issue of immigration and border security. And I remain greatly concerned about the terrorist threat from our southern border that illegal immigration presents. In 2001, the Border Patrol apprehended over 300,000 people unlawfully crossing the southern border. Nearly 50,000 of those individuals were from countries other than Mexico. Of those, 255 were aliens from countries designated special interest countries. How would you assess the threat to national security and our potential vulnerability to terrorism given the current state of border security?
Senator, specifically, I agree completely that the vulnerabilities that the illicit trafficking networks or transnational criminal organizations exploit with a variety of goods, such as drugs, weapons, etc., is a national security problem. And I believe that we should consider that the terrorists can ride on that distribution network as easily as drugs, weapons, or people. And so I assess this as an important national security issue, and we play an important role in supporting our partner agencies like Customs and Border Patrol and ICE and DEA in really effective ways to help make sure we know who's trying to get across the border. But more importantly, what are these organizations that reach deep into Mexico, Central America? Actually, some of them are global. How do we put pressure on those networks, disrupt them, dismantle them, and prevent them from using our strength, which is our border, and turning it into a vulnerability?
Thank you, General. My time has expired, but with the Chairman's indulgence, if I could ask one more question of General Kelly, which is, General Kelly, we're seeing troubling reports about the Venezuelan government with the possible assistance from Iran and Cuba using cyber tools against their own people. And what tools does Southcom have to make sure to limit the influence and assistance that the Iranians and Cubans can have helping governments or other actors from attacking South Americans?
Senator, the Southcom doesn't have, at this point, its building doesn't have a great cyber infrastructure as of yet. But that said, obviously the U.S. government has tremendous cyber capability, and I know above the classification certainly of this discussion, I know that the larger American government institutions are looking hard at that. But you're right, there's every evidence that they are using cyber in one way or another to try to control what's going on in their country.
Senator King.